moviegoers, and welcome to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and these are my pets, George the Gorilla, Kyle the Dolphin, and Frank the Sea Turtle. Okay, now I said last week that I was going to have a two-part movie review for you, as in a double whammy, but that's not how things worked out this time. Regardless, I still have a job to do, so yeah. And I'm extremely excited to talk about the next two films. Well, really just this first one, but you get the point. What film am I talking about, of course? Well, Mortal Kombat!
Oh, hell yeah. I freaking love Mortal Kombat. This epic bloodbath of a franchise has been around for over 30 years, and despite having a rebooted timeline twice in its tenure, it is a franchise that does not seem to be slowing down anytime soon. The franchise debuted back in 1992 with the original arcade classic, which was the first video game to scare the freaking government to the point where the rating system for games, E for everyone, E10 plus for everyone 10 and up, T for teen, and M for mature and all that stuff, was fully established. That said, it was still a game that defined a generation of kids and adults and continues to do so up to this very day. So how does this relate to filmmaking in any conceivable way? Well, back in the early to mid-1990s, film producer Lawrence Kasanoff saw potential in the game as a cinematic outing, and received the film rights relatively easily from Midway Games, though only a limited option. To direct the film would be Paul W.S. Anderson, who is a massive fan of the games, so much that he read a book on special effects just to direct the film. Now that's dedication if I've ever seen it. The film was finally released in the summer of 1995. And despite mixed critical reviews, the film made quite a bit of money at the box office. And nearly 30 years later, it is still called the best video game movie ever made. However, the franchise's lore has been massively expanded upon since 1995, and a newer, more modern adaptation has hit the silver screen as of recently. So, one must wonder how well this film has held up.
That's why I'm here. This is the 1995 film adaptation of Mortal Kombat!
Lord Raiden, played by Christopher Lambert, handpicks three martial artists: Federal Agent Sonya Blade, played by Bridget Wilson-Sampras, Shaolin monk Liu Kang, played by Robin Shou, and action movie sensation Johnny Cage, played by Lyndon Ashby, and mentors them. He transports the trio to Outworld, the site of an interdimensional fighting tournament known as Mortal Kombat. There, the three humans must defeat the demonic warriors of the evil Shang Tsung, played by Hiroyuki Tagawa, or allow him to take over the Earth. Of course.
Okay, I can confidently say that this is the first great video game movie. While there are aspects of the 1993 Mario movie and Street Fighter film that I enjoy, and I choose to forget Double Dragon altogether, Mortal Kombat, for the most part, sticks very close to its source material. It's not all down to a T, but the franchise was still in its infancy at this point, and not many things were established 100%. Regardless, this is a movie I find highly underrated, and definitely enjoy way more than I should. So, let's go into this movie and talk about the aspects of it that I enjoyed the most.
Alright, this is a massive cast of characters that I am more interested to talk about because I know a lot of them in the games and how they already act. And most, if not all of them, have been cast for a modern adaptation, so there's no need to do what I did last week with the casting of a new Street Fighter film. Let's start with Liu Kang. For the protagonist of this story, I think he works quite well. His motivation is pretty simple. He wants revenge on Shang Tsung for killing his brother. It's a basic motivation, but it works quite well, since Mortal Kombat has never been one particularly focused on fully fleshing out stories. Until recently, that is. Liu Kang was very charming, and was the perfect hero to follow throughout the course of the film. I also thought that Sonya was a great character as well. I've always loved her tough go-getter spirit from the games, and they did a great job with making her a tough soldier with a no-nonsense attitude. Also, I can't help but find her extremely attractive in the tank top and short shorts. It's just me, I'm sorry, it is what it is. My favorite character of the bunch has to be Johnny Cage. I've always been a fan of his oblivious yet honorable personality. He's clearly intelligent, but he's extremely ignorant and goofy, and that leads to several hilarious scenes. This film nails him down perfectly. Absolutely perfectly, and even creates new staples of the character, which includes several of his one-liners, which I dare not spoil because they're so great and deserve to be experienced in a standard watch of the movie. Finally, for our core cast of characters, we have Lord Raiden. Now, I'm not exactly keen on having a white actor play a Japanese character, but I think Christopher Lambert added to this sly seriousness to Raiden, and it worked pretty well for the tone of this movie. I think Mako would have done a great job as well, but Lambert did great for what he was given. Oh, and Katana is also in this movie, and she's played by Talisa Soto. She doesn't really have too much to do, but it was nice to see her on screen at least. Now let's talk about some of the opponents our characters have to face. Starting off with Kano, played by Trevor Goddard. Kano is the scumbag character, the one in charge of a full-on gang known as the Black Dragon Clan, and he's always had a knack for being quite a sleazeball. This film was the first instance we hear of Kano's Australian accent, which has been implemented ever since. That being said, he doesn't have that much to do, and while there is potential of good storytelling with his rivalry with Sonya, it is very underplayed. Now the good news is that the new film established a much better Kano, and we'll talk about him in the future. The point is that there is a lot of potential with this version of Kano, especially in regards to his interesting characterization in the film, but it just doesn't feel fully exposed here. And then we have Scorpion and Sub-Zero, two rivals from the games that are established as generic henchmen. Now, normally this would bother me since they are the face of the franchise and are easily the most iconic characters, but it doesn't really since the lore wasn't fully established yet, despite the backstory we get in Mortal Kombat 2, and the animated film Scorpion's Revenge is essentially a remake of this film with a better focus on these two characters, which I do plan on talking about in the future. Hell, even in the newer live-action film has a better focus of the relationship between Scorpion and Sub-Zero. That said, these two have their shining moments. Scorpion has that epic battle with Johnny Cage, and Sub-Zero has the intimidating look as well, and despite the fact that his ice powers weren't depicted in a brutal fashion, like in the future film adaptations, I still think he packed a punch. That ninja that I did think the most of the screen time was worth it has to be Reptile. Yes, he's a CGI creature for the first bit of the film, but once he gets into his green ninja form, you get to see the slick and unforgiving fighting style of my, by far, favorite fighter from the games. He also looks extremely intimidating as well. More than freaking Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Like, honestly, that's not great. That is quite a feat. With all the praise I have for Reptile in this movie, my second favorite of the villains of our heroes going up against is Goro. Not only is he brought to life by practical effects, which while dated do work for the movie's tone, but he's just so damn entertaining. He's voiced by freaking Kevin Michael Richardson, who does a great job giving a deep and booming voice to the Prince of Shokan and General of the Outworld's army. Goro is easily one of my favorite parts of the film, way more than the ninjas, which is definitely a shocker to me. However, the best villain of the film, and one of the best characters, has to be Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa as Shang Tsung. And do you want to know how iconic this guy is? He's so iconic that they took his likeness and voice and added him into the most recent of the games, Mortal Kombat 11. And that's no accident. Shang Tsung is menacing, ruthless, cold, and even frightening in several scenes, and Kari's performance really makes it that much better. The iconic line of "Your soul is mine" has been used everywhere in the franchise since this film, and that's definitely nothing to scoff at. Overall, the characters in this movie are okay at worst and really iconic and memorable at best. I also did mention that MK11 was the most recent entry in the franchise. I know MK1 has its fans, but I wasn't a big fan of the story choices they made in that. Anyways, moving on. Let's move on to the effects of this movie and the look of it. The way they brought the fortress of Shang Tsung to life was great, as was the final battle location and the Shaolin Monk Temple. Also commendable was the puppet they created for Goro. That said, the CGI with Reptile isn't exactly up to par with today's CGI, but I can't exactly complain too much. As for the music, it was composed by George S. Clinton, who not only gave us a charming electronica score, but was also able to recapture the magic of the game's soundtrack so well, even using the iconic Mortal Kombat theme, Techno Syndrome, in certain sequences as well. Finally, we have the action scenes. For the first time in one of these movies, the fight scenes are actually mostly good. The best fight scenes come in the form of the fast-paced fight scenes, including Liu Kang's battle with Shang Tsung and Reptiles being my favorite, and Johnny Cage's battle with Scorpion and Goro. The rest of the fights, though smaller scale, worked well and were fast-paced with the rest of the film. Yes, it is disappointing that there wasn't much blood, but for a PG-13 adaptation of such a violent game series, it does make the most of it. So yeah, Mortal Kombat is the first great video game movie. Sure, it's not great in some areas, but it makes up for it in several others. It's highly entertaining and definitely underrated in my book, which is why I'm going to give it a solid 9 out of 10. Well, what else can I say? I mean, I do have one more thing to say, and I think you know what it is. Mortal Kombat!
Well, that's it for this review. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this film in the comment section below, and I'm also excited to hear how you're going to watch me suffer when we take a look at the sequel to this film next week, which I am not at all looking forward to talking about at all, once I said whatever. With that said, and until then, my name is Mr. CCS, this is Movie Central, and that, my friends, is a wrap. See you next week.